I made some mistakes when I started my business. Part of the reason I got into coaching, but here's my top 5, and we'll go backwards in order. First thing I would say is I didn't think big enough. My worldview was pretty small at the time that I started my business. I worked for a Fortune 500 company, so I knew what a big business looked like, but in terms of me believing, me thinking that I could do something that was big, it didn't compute with me. I didn't even see the opportunity in front of me. Now, once I got into business, I started seeing opportunity everywhere, and that's when I would say my perspective really started to shift. But it took me taking the leap with the mindset of I need to pay bills, I need to provide for my family. That's what was my original motivation, was just providing for my family. And my goodness, you're talking about a narrow scope. So I got into business, I started talking to people, started meeting new people, started exchanging ideas, and I would say my mindset started to shift. I started capitalizing on some of those opportunities, but as in with anybody without clear direction or motivation, or really understanding my purpose, I started trying to maximize all of the opportunities, and I just got completely spread thin. I got burnt out, and I was all over the place. So I would say that was probably one of the first lessons that I learned. Not the biggest one, but one of the first that I learned is that direction, clarity of purpose, understanding your values, all those things really play a big part in your business. Another thing that I learned, probably not the hard way, I would say this probably could apply to everyone, no matter how good you are at this, but a mistake that I had was not hiring fast enough. I did hire pretty early on, I would say, and I credit my business coach, honestly, to helping me see that and understanding the time value of money. But I wish I would have hired sooner. I wish that I had hired better. Having a clear understanding of roles, of accountability, and the ability to train someone to be successful, not just have someone be a helper, if that makes sense. So lots to go into that, but I would say, again, just to recap really quick, not thinking big enough and not hiring fast enough are probably in my top 5. The next one is not being aggressive enough in my business development efforts. There's 2 things I said I would never be: a business owner and a salesperson. And ironically enough, it's the 2 things that I love the most. But when I got into this, I didn't really understand what sales was. I thought of sales in a, I guess you could say in a used car salesman kind of mindset, or somebody that has to convince you to purchase from them. That is certainly a strategy. It's certainly an approach that is still used and practiced to this day, and people are successful at it. I don't want to take credit away from them or diminish that strategy in any way. It's not for me. It's not me. It's not who I am. What I came to love is business development, and I really came to love the relationship aspect of it, and building relationships, strategic relationships, to a point where I didn't have to sell anymore. It clicked with me one day, and I realized that the phone calls that were the best customers on all fronts, they were the highest paying customers, they asked the least amount of questions, they trusted me to come in, do the work, do it well, and for them to pay. I realized that the people that would call, and it was only a matter of when can you do it, and how much was a question, just so they had an idea, but it was never a problem. I could list any number, and it was never a problem. When that clicked, and I realized that, I went all in on that strategy. I was able to unpack how that happened, and I've been able to put it into a course that's in Restoration Business Academy called Dartboard Marketing. I loved it. You could get leads, a constant flow of leads that were high quality leads on all levels for less than a cup of coffee. And there's some implicit meaning in that, meaning that you take time to sit down, have conversations with people, build relationships with people, deliver value to people, not money, deliver real value to people. And 9 times out of 10, the right ones will reciprocate. So that was the third thing, not being aggressive enough in my business development efforts. In hindsight, man alive, I could have started way sooner and ramped up a whole lot faster if I'd have known then what I know now. Another thing in my top 5, I would say, is not understanding my numbers soon enough. I had been to college, I had a degree, all the things. I sucked at accounting. It just it didn't make sense to me. When I got into business, I lived out of my checking account just like every other small business owner does for the most part when they're starting out. They got money in, as long as there's enough money in the account today, I'm good to go. That's so short-sighted. And if this is you, get some help. Find somebody that can help you understand your numbers. I got to a point, though, where because I'm a data guy, I ended up finding my numbers in a roundabout way. I wanted to know on a typical job how much chemical I was using when I was cleaning carpets. And I would literally measure, I had a stick measure that I would measure out and I knew that I would start every job with, a 2-gallon sprayer, for example. And I had a stick measure that I would drop down in there, and it had markers on it, little indentions on it, so that I knew how much chemical I was using. And I tracked all the square footage of the carpet that I cleaned, everything. I tracked everything. Any metric I could find to measure, I did it. And that's actually how I started kind of coming to this realization of, okay, so that's my usage, but now what's the cost? And this is what I invoiced, and this is the percentage of my gross revenue that I spent on this job. And then it all started like trickling in. Took me way too long to get there, though. I really, in hindsight, wish that I had developed a relationship with someone that could explain these things to me as I was starting out, so that I didn't waste a whole bunch of money. I had a bookkeeper, but all she really did was just make sure that everything was entered into a tax account. It wasn't for business development, and I don't mean like from a sales marketing perspective. I mean from developing my business with proper systems and processes. So recap real quick: not thinking big enough, not hiring fast enough, not being aggressive enough in my business development efforts, and not understanding my numbers soon enough. Those are the first 4. The biggest mistake, hands down, bar none, that I made was I didn't know how to go get leads. I didn't know how to go get business. So I went with the squeaky wheel. Home Advisor and Angie's List were pounding me almost on the daily. And they had a good pitch. I was the guy. I was their guy. I bought it. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And in all of this, I don't want anyone to hear that there's not a time and a place, because there is. But I really, I can't say that I got taken advantage of, because I knew what I was doing at the time. I knew the money that I was spending. I was tracking it very diligently. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And going back to the number 3 item that I talked about, not being aggressive enough in my business development efforts, I would say this ties into that. I didn't know how to develop my own business. So I paid an astronomical amount of money for leads that I could have gotten on my own. I was spending over 50% of my gross monthly income on leads. 50%. That's a lot of money. And I was looking at my income and outgo one month. I would wish I could say a P&L, but it wasn't that fancy. It was how much did I bring in this month and how much did I send out. And I realized I was spending a lot of money on leads, and I was working a lot of hours, a lot of extra hours just to pay that bill. And it struck me that I could work half as much and make the same amount of money, because the leads that came in organically paid me a lot more than the leads that I got, that I landed, that came from Home Advisor and Angie's List. So competitive on the Home Advisor and Angie's List leads. Prices had to be slashed just to win the job. So I realized that if I just stopped paying for leads and I spend time, because I had more time than I had money, on finding my own work, that I could have more time with my family, which was the goal in the first place anyway. I'd come from a job where I was spending 18, 20 hours a day working, sleeping for about 4 hours a night, basically. And I was sick of living the corporate life. I didn't want to work more. I wanted to work less and have more time with my family. That was the whole driving force behind me starting my own business. So I cut out all the leads. I cut out all the lead generation. I just cold turkey, cut them off. Wasn't worth it to me anymore. And I spent that time going and meeting with people, and hands down, best decision I ever made. I spent so much time building relationships with people that 6 years later, 7 years later now, I still have a great relationship with many of them. They've become friends. And as of February 2025, it's been about 3 months since my last call for service came in. I had a few requests for service come through in November, and I sold my business in 2020. So over 4.5 years of semi-consistent calls coming in, because of the reputation that I built through a referral network in my community. So all that to say, take the time to build relationships, especially when you're just getting started. If you're spending more than 20% of your gross income on lead gen, I would strongly encourage you to rethink your strategy. You're not spending enough time building relationships, I would argue. And I'm going to leave a link in the description below for our dartboard marketing course. You can buy it as a standalone, or you can join RBA for a fraction of the cost. and get a lot more value above and beyond just the course. But take that dartboard marketing course. It will expand your horizons, and it will teach you step by step how to build your referral network much bigger, and this goes back to the original point that I made, much bigger than you're probably thinking now.